You want details? Fine. I drive a Ferrari 355 Cabriolet. What's up? I have a ridiculous house in the South Fork. I have every toy you can possibly imagine. And best of all, kids, I am liquid. So, now you know what's possible. Let me tell you what's required.
Okay, we got a few life advices here. I really like this first one. And then we have a female entry, which isn't really about women. It's more about guys. But we'll get to it. All right. Okay, life advice, rr@gmail.com. Coaching youth basketball dilemma. Okay, so here we go. Guys, I'm a youth basketball coach for a local middle school. So 7th, 8th. I guess some middle schools are still 9th grade. I don't know. I think most of us understand the parameters of what we're talking about. Ultimately, my question is, what age does superior talent make positive attitude and work ethic a non-factor in deciding playing time? Here's the dilemma. I have a player, 7th grader, who's a great kid. Good teammate, very coachable, works hard, will do the dirty work, effort plays, but he's just not that talented. Don't get me wrong. He doesn't necessarily hurt us. It's not like he's throwing up bad shots or making a ton of turnovers, but the opportunity cost of having him in there versus one of my other super gifted wings probably does hurt us. Also, I hate to say it, but unless he starts reining in deep jumpers or grows 5 inches, this kid will likely not make the high school team, so he may be down to his last few years of basketball anyway. All right, if you can already tell as a 12 or 13-year-old that he's not going to be playing in high school, I think you've already answered your question here, even though we have more to get to in the email. He's getting a healthy amount of minutes right now because he's our only wing who seems remotely interested in playing help D and crashing the defensive glass. You have your guards crashing the defensive glass in junior high. In contrast, I have 2 guys who play the same position who can do some special things talent-wise. Problem is they are both a giant pain in my ass for various reasons, but credit where credit is due. They have the stuff to not just make the high school team, but be real 4-year contributors. So we're talking about kids that could make varsity as freshmen. So I feel obligated to develop them. So that was my addition there about the varsity thing. Because if you're talking about kids that are going to make varsity, I don't care where the high school is as a freshman. I mean, unless you're in Cuddy Hunk or something. All right, to add another level of frustration, the parents for the first kid are dream parents. So the hardworking kid that's not that good. Dream parents for a coach. The others are always bugging me about literally every minute decision that I make. They especially hate how many minutes the first kid gets. I can already tell where this is going. Remember, these are junior high children, so I feel like attitude still counts for something, or maybe I'm talking myself into it because I like this kid. Any advice would be much appreciated. You know, your heart is in the right place here. And I can kind of speak to this because I was that kid. I was the kid on a AAU team before it was even really AAU. I mean, I know AAU in its form has been around forever, but I think I've told the story once before, but an older kid in my high school was like, look, I'm going to try out for this team. There's going to be like maybe 30 kids in Connecticut, and they're splitting it into North and South. And it's this legendary coach from Wethersfield who's coaching it, and you had to get an invite to even try out for this thing. And I was like, dude, I'm not going to make that team. And you got to understand, too, me as a freshman, I don't even know if I weighed 140 pounds. And so I showed up, and I ran like crazy and busted my ass. And I used to do this thing where if a bigger guy were, going up for rebound, I put my hands on his shoulders and use his shoulders to jump up. And nobody could really tell that I was doing it because I was so small. And then I remember I did it to a senior once, and he was like, if you do that to me again, I'm going to fucking kill you. And I just was like, whatever. I was oblivious to it all because I just was like, I thought, I'm trying to do whatever I can to be out here to survive. I hadn't even hit puberty yet, man. So I made the team, and I shouldn't have. I mean, other guys were really going to go to college and play. And we played that was when I played against Anthony Best and had no idea what was going on. I got benched pretty quick. And I started, and it pissed everybody else off because I wasn't even close to being the same. And physically, it was even worse. And then I remember finally the coach just gave up. Like, he just stopped playing me. He goes, I started you because I loved the way you approach this, but I'm going to lose everybody else. And it was like during a game when he did this, he pulled me out, sat me down, got right up onto me, put his arm around me. It was like, I love you, man, but you're just too small, man. You're just too small, which I think is kind of the seed that was planted in the foundation of me wanting to be bigger and maybe whack a couple guys in my 20s. But that definitely was as brutal as anything that ever happened to me in a very, very non-worthy athletic career to talk about. But I'll never forget it. And you know what? He was right. I should have been out there. I know what he was trying to do. He was trying to prove a point to the other guys because of the way that I played, but I had no business being out there. I shouldn't even have made the team. And, I mean, it was ugly at times. And he was going to lose everybody. So, yes, this is 7th grade. That was high school. It's a little different. But, as much as you're like, hey, it's junior high, you did all caps children. That's not how they see it. That's not how the parents see it. And if you have these other players that are that much better, these kids know they're playing pickup games. They've been doing stuff in the off season. They're probably working this guy in games. So, they may have a bad attitude because they can't believe you're playing the guy. Now, I'm not like full circle blaming you here as if this is your fault. Like I said in the beginning, it's kind of cool that you want to do this and you want to reward the kid that's playing the game the way you want them to be playing it. But if you're talking about guys that are going to maybe be freshman varsity players in high school versus a kid that's not even going to play, then I think it's probably better he learns that now. I mean, that's just me. I don't know that you're doing anybody any real favors here. And the parents are going to drive you crazy no matter what. So are you doing this as an ego thing where you don't really want to give in to them? If the more talented players had parents that were cooler and with the program, dude, they might be just mad at you because it's absurd that you're playing the kid that isn't good more minutes. So I know we can keep saying children, and it's not like I'm sitting here thinking of 12 and 13-year-olds as adults, but if the other guys are that much better, I don't know. For whatever message you're trying to send by having the kid that isn't as good play, you're probably just pissing everybody off and they're talking about you. I mean, we had another junior high year where there was only a couple of us that were even going to play in high school on our team. We weren't any good, all right? We were a small redneck town. This is where I was living at the time. And, anybody that had some like dudes that could play, like it wasn't going to go great for us. And I remember, I think it was like a guidance counselor got the head coaching gig for the junior high team, and he decided to dress 30 fucking players. I mean, it was a joke. So he was trying to do this like positivity deal before anybody was keeping track of that on Instagram. And it was like, everybody who tries out makes the team. And then there's going to be like 2 groups that dress, and there's only going to be a road team. And those of us that were starting were just like, this is a joke. Like, what is this? And so for all the goodwill, and he was, look, he was trying to do the right thing. In junior high kids are taking this seriously, man. So yes, we can all hear whatever age we're at, whether it's me in my 40s, people older or younger listening to this podcast, all of you going, hey, whatever, it's a kid. But that's not how you think when you're 12, 13, 14. You're thinking like, this guy's costing me minutes. This guy's hurting my development. And they're probably working this kid, like I said, in pickup games, so they know who can play and who can't. And that's probably as big a reason. Maybe the parents are going to be difficult no matter what, but you're not doing yourself any favors by probably not playing the better players. So I would figure out your rotations here a little bit. But you're not in a great spot here. I kind of feel for you on this one. Okay. We get a name here. I don't know if this name is real or not. Okay. I am writing this request for advice on behalf of my husband in hopes you settle a light disagreement we've been having the past few months. All right. I'm probably not your guy. Let's try it anyway. For reference, my husband is 31, 5'10", back squats 305. Okay. Shout out to the wife here. He has great hair, piercing blue eyes, and more often than I would like is confused with Bradley Cooper by random women. Guy's a smoke show. What can you say? He did well. Our disagreement, not that that's everything. All right. Our disagreement began in December during an annual ski trip with my husband's friends and their significant others. They're a great group of guys and always a ton of fun. This year, one of my husband's closest friends brought his girlfriend, who we were all interested to meet because they had already booked a wedding venue for the upcoming summer, despite knowing each other for less than a year and not yet being engaged. Okay. Repeat that again. They've already booked a wedding venue for this summer, knowing each other less than a year and not yet being engaged. Okay. The group has been friends for 10 years. The friend in question is typically a great guy, laid back, considerate, funny, loves being outside, is highly skilled skier, athlete in general. Well, you seem to be kind of into this guy on the side here. No, I'm just kidding. This year, though, she lets us know he was none of the above. So he was not laid back, considerate, funny, did not love being outside, was not highly skilled skier or athlete in general. He not only rarely engaged with the group during the ski week, but by the end, it was abundantly clear that his girlfriend was one of the worst hangs ever. See, that sentence alone makes me think that our emailer here has her stuff together. So credit to you. She forgot her wallet and had him go pick it up on 3 separate occasions, 30 minutes away each time. 3 times, Kyle? 3 times?
Unacceptable.
I did that once with a girl who we were driving to the vineyard, and we were about 45 minutes into the trip, and she's like, hey, I just realized I left my wallet in the apartment.
It's Phone Keys Wallet. Wherever you go, it's Phone Keys Wallet. Grow up.
But you know what you do as a grown-up? You don't get mad. You can't get mad. because getting mad fixes none of it. And then it
point.
sets a horrible tone for the rest of your weekend together. You know, what are you going to do? Like the first time you're spending time with somebody, really lay into them in the car. You're so stupid sometimes. God,
That's a good point.
you're fucking it up already. We're not even there. You know what I mean? Like if you're one of those guys, what do you want to make it worse? So people need to do a bit. But again, if you're together for years, then you probably, maybe more likely to do that, or sometimes they do it to you too. Okay, all right, here we go. Back to this. So she forgets the wallet 3 separate times. That is brutal. Her confidence bordered on arrogance, and she somehow boastfully told a 20-minute story about getting a party started by playing the wobble. Oof. This is, man, this writer of this email is terrific. Great advanced scout for relationships. Her inability to ski was itself not a red flag, but her insistence that her boyfriend stay with her 100% of the time was. Over 5 days, he only skied with the guys once and took an extra day off the mountain because she didn't want to go. Bottom line, she was not cool. And he turned into a completely different person on this trip. For context, he brought a different girlfriend on a previous trip, and he was still his awesome self. So it's not like he's one version by himself in the group and then another version always with women. Apparently, he was great a year ago. It sounds like you like this ex-girlfriend. I'm not the only one who's so turned off by her in this relationship. The entire group agrees, and they have all had conversations with my husband revolving around the question, what is he thinking? All right, this is not new territory, right? We've been over this before. So to finish up the email, I'm just the only one who thinks someone should say something before our friends get hitched. My question for you is, should my husband, being the closest to his friend, say something to him about this girl before they get married? Does your response change if and when they get engaged? No, because we're basically talking about the same thing. You are, I believe, I just want to double check and finish the email here. Thanks in advance. I have to be honest. I only listen to the podcast when I'm in the car with my husband, but we'll always ask him to play your advice corner. It's hilarious. Spot on. Okay. All right. I thought there was more to this. Thank you for listening to only that part. We have some trade deadline stuff at the top if you want to rewind this. Okay. It doesn't really change because, the stakes are still the same. This friend of yours, your husband's friend, so let's emphasize that part of it, he is going to want to marry this person, all right? So if it were official and there were a ring on it, I kind of understand what you're saying, like, oh, can't someone say something to him now before the engagement's official despite the wedding venue? Isn't that a little bit easier? As I try to remind everybody in all this, we don't know what it's like when the door closes and those two are in their own little world, all right? And I know this also because I was the guy for one relationship where all of her friends were like, he sucks. And she's like, you don't know what he's like when he's away from everyone. He's sweet. He's considerate. I guess I was. I actually think I was being overrated a little bit there. But she would argue on my behalf because she was emotionally attached to me when in fact her friends were right. I sucked. All right. So you don't know. We don't know. All right. So for all of us that are judging these couples that are together all the time, there may be something about them when they are, and I'm not trying to be creepy here, but when they are by themselves, like there's a connection there that is different. Think about some of the relationships that you've been in. Maybe it's been really hard to get over somebody because you just felt like even though it wasn't perfect, like I keep thinking about this person or I want it to be a better version of what this was in the past. And there's just something there and it's hard to explain. So that's why we'll have so many friends that have relationships that we can't quite figure out. And even if we completely disprove of them, we're not giving them enough of the benefit of the doubt for understanding like what it is about those two that click in a certain way. And you can even probably think of like the people that you've been with, or maybe even somebody you married and you thought first impression, no way, or I don't like this person, or they're not my deal and all that stuff. And then just something happened. The chemistry was right. I believe in that kind of stuff where the chemistry is just kind of right with those two people. And whether or not they're completely aligned personality or personalities that challenge each other, it just works. So for you to see all of those things that I think you're totally right about, like you write out those sentences about somebody and their habits and their personality, the wobble thing, like who gives a shit? And you thought that was cool? Like you thought everybody were like, hey, I was kind of on the fence about you until you told a 20-minute story about getting a party started with the wobble, right? The wallet thing shows some bad signs that it happened 3 times. Once, twice, maybe 3 is a lot. And that her boyfriend couldn't go skiing with the rest of the guys on this epic ski trip because she just didn't feel like it. So then she wanted to just hang out. But you never know. Sometimes the guy blames the girl and he just wanted to hang out in a hotel room with his girlfriend the entire day. So there's also a possibility that that's what was happening there too. So now that we've put all this together, and we always have to remind ourselves there's parts of the relationship that we don't know anything about. What are you really solving here? He's going to marry the girl no matter what your husband probably says, right? I mean, how close are you with them? Is it a once a week deal? Or excuse me, is it a once a year deal? Because that's the other thing. Is like, are you willing to have your husband tell one of his close friends who you might not even hang out with that often that he shouldn't marry somebody because they didn't like her at a ski trip? That's a huge step. That's a huge ask. Now, again, your husband might be doing the right thing, but how many other of these stories have ended where it turns into, man, I wish you had said something. And you're like, actually, we kind of did. And you're like, yeah, whatever. I wasn't going to listen. Because most people aren't going to listen. So it's pretty simple. You can put yourself out there enough to risk ruining the friendship because the guy's going to probably marry her anyway. Nobody really wants to hear that. It gets weird when you start telling somebody like, hey, I don't like the person that you care this much about. It usually doesn't work out all that well. And it sounds like you're not even going to have to interact with them all that much anyway. So if a ski trip kind of sucks every now and then because of this, that's not really the end of the world. It's not like they're your neighbors. So I'm leaning towards don't bother. And it's pretty clear that your husband's leaning towards don't bother if you're writing the email, even though I think what you're trying to do, like you're right, but nobody's going to listen. So you have to kind of think of like, I can do this thing, but will it matter? I'm like, nah, probably not. So then why would I do the thing? Kyle?
I think this really sucks. And you probably can't bring her to parties either if you're not allowed to be away from her. And I don't think and I think you're right. I don't think you can tell somebody that it's like it's right before the marriage. I mean, it's not right before the marriage, but obviously he's decided it. Ideally, it would have been a year into having a shitty relationship from the outside view, and you say something before like the marriage thing's on the table because he's committed. So this sucks. You're a good observationist, but sorry.
Yeah. No, I mean, she didn't say anything here that's necessarily wrong, but there's just, like, it's going into this thing being like, hey, do you want to do this thing that's definitely not going to work and can damage the relationship? Well, wait, when you put it that way, like, why would I want to do that? I mean, you've got to be really, really close. I think that's like a, Peaky Blinders. One of the brothers was going to marry a prostitute, and, Murphy there, Tommy Shelby, he was like, no. And then he offered the prostitute money for one last roll in the hay, and she accepted. And then he said, all right, now I'm going to tell my brother that you accepted. Didn't sleep with her, let her keep the money. She was super bummed out. And, his brother dodged a bullet. That's a tad more serious of a scenario than a bad hang at a ski trip. We have a room. Well, actually, I think I can talk about it now because I don't know that this couple's together, but there's a, how can I be vague enough about this? Let's just say that there is someone connected to me that got married and tore it up, and his wife was still up and ready to go, and the husband was passed out, and she was like down to hang out with one of the other guests that night. And guys are like, is there a bigger red flag than that? Like, I don't know. And you know what? That one didn't work out. And guys were kind of like, dude, I don't know what you're doing here. And the guy was like, I don't care. And no one even wanted to say anything about that because it was like, whoa. So anyway, I don't want to even hint at what that was anymore.
Maybe her husband could like get a couple drinks with this guy. She can consent to like having her husband say like some not terrible things about her, but like, oh, she's so annoying. She's been the worst lately. And then just sort of get this guy loosened up. And then he's like got a couple beers in him and he's like, yeah, she actually is awful to me too. Like I can't bring her anywhere and I don't think my mom likes her. And he'd be like, well, dude, if you don't like her, like, are you sure you want to get married? It's like sort of like the reverse psychology thing. Maybe that's like maybe your only hope to like getting out some of these feelings.
That's really smart. And I was trying to think of like a perfect analogy for it where, it's like a movie scene, right? But life doesn't really work that way. But if you're writing out this movie scene where you start a conversation that's not really about what's being talked about, but it's about something else, it happens a lot, like at the end, right? Where it's like, oh, this big reveal. And it's like, are we talking about the same thing? Like, yeah, but it's not really what we're talking about.
Right.
Or you could start it up with like, hey, do you just wanted to double check because you're my friend, I care about you, but I love a few beers, maybe even some brown water, some harder stuff. Before this, be like, hey, I got a bottle of Japanese whiskey, real clean, silver barrels. Why don't you Actually, that doesn't make any sense. But why don't you come by and, congratulate you on your engagement or whatever, or, hopefully before that. And then you just say, hope you get a prenup, although it's only going to work if the guy has assets and she doesn't. Or maybe you both have assets, right? Although the George Costanza Seinfeld storyline where he was trying to get out of his wedding with Susan, and he was like, let's do a prenup. And she was like, are you serious? You don't even have
in his face, right?
Yeah. She was like, yeah, no problem. Like not even remotely offended. That's a little bit of an older reference for some of you, but you could start it that way. And then now you're in the conversation where that's not really what you're asking. You're hoping to kind of get to a point of comfort where you can talk about this, because if you're going to do it, you got to massage your way into this topic. So you're right, Kyle. Figure out a way to start this without having it be like, hey, nobody likes your girlfriend and we can't believe you're going to marry her. So as your best friend, that's what I'm saying. Instead, it's, hey, let's spend some time together or whatever. And then, have it get there, maybe talk about somebody else from the group that's having some struggles. Be like, oh, we saw this one coming a mile away. She forgets her license all the time. Can you believe that? And you're just, no, I'm just kidding. Obviously, figure that out. Okay, all right. Went too long on that one, but we'll be back. By the way, we're doing a Thursday release, so Tuesday, Thursday, and then we're doing a big trade deadline extravaganza, Bill and I, on Thursday. So we'll see how much action we have and whether we have a ton or very little. We'll break it all down and kind of some of the stuff that we're hearing that usually the information flows a little bit more freely once the deadline is passed too as well. So that's what we'll be doing this week. That's the plan.